nobody has been able to read a word of it for 400 and some years.
The Voynich Manuscript is a book written by hand that is reliably dated to the early part of the 15th century.
There are basically 5 sections in the manuscript.
After 600 years of remaining a coded mystery, an AI system has finally interpreted the Voynich Manuscript. Artificial intelligence has managed to crack the book that left the world's best codebreakers spinning on their heads. But the secrets this ancient book reveals will leave you totally speechless and wishing you had never heard it in the first place. As we dive into this video, you discover that the manuscript's encrypted text isn't really what everyone expected. Instead, it exposed dark practices that are difficult to comprehend, deliberately buried by people who understood exactly how dangerous this information could be. Let's investigate. This is probably one of the most discussed ancient books in history. Tracing its origin, we find this manuscript carbon dated to somewhere between 1404 and 1438. This 240-page vellum-page medieval book has already become one of the world's most mysterious texts, defeating even the highest human intellect. This means whatever is contained in this book happened in one of the most crucial periods in the history of humanity. Now, the official name for this book is Voynich MS-408. It was written in some unknown inscriptions that experts have dubbed Voynichese, with no author's name on it, packed with roughly 170,000 characters, arranged in patterns that look exactly like a real language, tells us absolutely nothing. FBI, cryptanalysts, trained linguists, medieval scholars who've spent their entire lives studying ancient texts have all taken their best shot at cracking this thing. Even the legendary Alan Turing himself, the genius who managed to crack the Nazi Enigma machine and probably saved World War II, walked away from this manuscript completely defeated. For over a century since its modern rediscovery back in 1912, it's sparked countless wild theories, lost languages, alien communications, secret alchemical formulas. Whatever you can think of, someone has already suggested it. Every single theory has eventually crumbled to dust when put under real scrutiny, but all that is about to change. To really understand better, the Voynich Manuscript at first glance looks like just another medieval book, roughly the size of a paperback bound in worn old parchment. But crack it open and you realize you're staring at something that should probably come with a warning label. The manuscript divides itself into 5 distinct sections: botanical, astronomical, biological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. Each section builds on the last one, creating what appears to be a comprehensive manual for strange, unsettling practices. The eerie illustrations are the first clue that there's something really strange about this book. Page after page reveals botanical drawings of plants that simply don't exist anywhere on Earth. Twisted specimens with leaves that seem to be dripping some kind of substance, spiky protrusions, and root systems that seem to be writhing right off the very page. One particularly disturbing image shows a reptilian creature, part dragon and part seahorse, consuming one of these impossible plants with disturbing enthusiasm. But this is where it gets worse. The biological sections of the book feature drawings of nude women floating around in green, murky pools that are connected by tubes and pipes. One look and you're thinking, what were they doing to these people? The astronomical charts take familiar zodiac signs and twist them into completely unrecognizable configurations, while star maps present celestial arrangements that don't match any sky that's ever existed above our planet. It's like someone took astronomy and ran it through a blender with something much darker. The meticulous organization of each section tells you this was the work of someone with profound, terrifying knowledge who made a very deliberate choice to hide it behind layers and layers of encryption, beyond any human comprehension. Now, for centuries, multiple hands have handled this material, but have found it impossible to break its encryption. Back in the late 1500s, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, a guy who was famous for his fascination with alchemy and occult knowledge, purchased this mysterious book for 600 gold ducats. That's equivalent to roughly $100,000 in today's money, which tells you Rudolph believed he was buying something of extraordinary value, but records show he never successfully decoded even a single word of it. After Rudolph died, the manuscript passed to George Beresch, an alchemist from Prague, who became completely consumed by its secrets. Beresch spent years trying to crack the code as well, writing increasingly desperate letters to scholars across Europe to help him figure this thing out. When Beresch finally died, this cursed book fell to Johannes Marcus Marci, a Prague physician and scientist who inherited both the manuscript and Beresch's obsession with it. In 1665, Marci made one final desperate gambit. He sent the manuscript to Athanasius Kircher, the brilliant Jesuit scholar who had successfully cracked Egyptian hieroglyphs. But even Kircher, one of the greatest minds of his time, ran out of ideas. Then the manuscript completely vanished for over 2 centuries. It finally resurfaced in 1912, when this Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased it from a Jesuit college in Italy. He had no idea of the mysteries he had in his possession. But what exactly does this strange language look like? Voynichese represents what might be the most sickening linguistic puzzle that humans have ever encountered. What makes it so frustrating is, according to statistical analysis, that it behaves exactly like a real, natural language. Word frequencies follow all the patterns you'd expect. Sentence structures appear totally consistent, and character combinations suggest genuine grammatical rules are at work. Yet, despite showing every single hallmark of authentic human communication, it remains completely, utterly incomprehensible. The closer you get, the more it seems to slip away from you. The script contains approximately 20 to 25 distinct characters, written in this flowing, confident hand that suggests whoever created this was entirely fluent in whatever system they were using. They were writing naturally, easily, in a system so thoroughly encrypted that even our modern computational analysis failed to crack it for centuries. Think about that for a second. As cryptographer Elizabeth Friedman observed back in 1960, anyone trying to translate this manuscript is doomed to utter frustration. Her words turned out to be prophetic for the next 6 decades, but the breakthrough seemed closer than she or anyone would have predicted. Cracking the Voynich manuscript hit its peak during the 20th century, when professional codebreaking reached incredible new heights of sophistication. World War I had shown everyone just how critical cryptography could be, producing an entire generation of experts who had learned to crack the most complex enemy communications. Naturally, these battle-tested cryptographers turned their skills towards what looked like history's greatest mystery. The most significant early attempt came from a couple, William and Elizabeth Friedman. The Friedmans had successfully decrypted enemy communications that had stumped entire government departments, even the most sophisticated military codes that enemies could throw at them. Yet the Voynich manuscript defeated them completely. After years of intensive study, they concluded that while the text definitely exhibited the statistical properties of genuine language, identifying what that language was, or even figuring out if it still existed anywhere on Earth, remained completely impossible. Their failure was particularly significant because it represented the first truly systematic, scientific approach to the manuscript using proven cryptographic techniques that had actually worked in the real world. If the Friedmans couldn't crack it, maybe nobody could, or at least not yet. World War II brought a whole new wave of code-breaking expertise to the problem. The conflict had produced some of history's most skilled cipher specialists, people who were fresh from breaking the Nazi Enigma machine and Japanese diplomatic codes, achievements that had helped win the war. These experts approached the manuscript with a kind of tenacity that comes from unprecedented wartime successes. They had cracked codes that Nazi Germany thought were unbreakable. So how hard could one medieval book be? They applied increasingly sophisticated mathematical and computational methods, including early mechanical calculating devices that represented the absolute cutting edge of technological analysis. Yet, just like everyone before them, they found themselves banging against a brick wall. So the question remains, What is it about this language that makes even the smartest humans look like dummies? The truth is just as shocking as it comes. The failed attempts of humans trying to decode the Voynich Manuscript weren't because people weren't smart enough. The problem was much more fundamental. It had to do with basic limitations in how human brains process linguistic patterns. You see, traditional cryptographic approaches rely on recognizable structures, letter frequencies, common word patterns, grammatical relationships that correspond to languages we already know. The authors seem to have anticipated this thought pattern and specifically designed the manuscript to exploit these exact assumptions. Human codebreakers, no matter how brilliant or experienced, inevitably brought their own preconceptions to the analysis. They looked for familiar patterns, expected certain linguistic behaviors, and unconsciously filtered everything they observed through the lens of writing systems they already understood. But there was also a psychological element that made things even worse. Researchers became emotionally invested in their theories, seeing confirmation where none actually existed, and dismissing contradictory evidence that didn't fit what they wanted to believe. In some way, the manuscript had become more like a mirror that reflected whatever the observer most desperately wanted to see, making any kind of objective analysis nearly impossible. Each attempt to crack Voynichese was often slapped with a new theory that would attract press conferences, maybe even some media attention, only to collapse like a house of cards the moment other experts actually examined it closely. Back in the 1920s, this professor at the University of Pennsylvania, named William Newbold, claimed he had discovered microscopic markings hidden within the manuscript's letters that revealed a secret cipher. According to Newbold's interpretation, these tiny details show that the manuscript was written by the 13th century monk Roger Bacon and described advanced scientific instruments including telescopes and microscopes, centuries before anyone was supposed to have invented them. Of course, the theory captured international attention from academic journals and newspapers, and for a brief moment it seemed to hold water. But then other scholars took a closer look and quickly demonstrated that Newbold's microscopic cipher was absolutely nothing more than natural cracking in the ink, magnified way beyond reason, and completely misinterpreted. That alone left Newbold's reputation in shambles. The failures just keep flooding in throughout the decades. In 2017, a television writer named Nicholas Gibbs made international headlines by claiming the manuscript was actually a woman's health manual written in Latin abbreviations. Sounds reasonable, right? Well, it was wrong. Latin experts systematically tore his translations apart, revealing them as essentially gibberish. Turns out Gibbs didn't have any real experience in historical text decoding. He'd studied the manuscript for a television show rather than serious academic research. Even more embarrassing was David Cheshire's 2019 claim that the book was written in some lost Proto-Romance language that was supposedly a predecessor to modern English and Spanish. The news hit media outlets like a tsunami and was debunked with equal force, as linguists pointed out fundamental flaws in his methodology and conclusions that anyone could have spotted. Some more absurd theories were that the text was of alien origins. Some say it's simply glossolalia, the writing of spirits, written in a trance state. But it was clear that only a completely different kind of approach, one that was free from human assumptions and emotional investment, would ever prove capable of penetrating the medieval encryption that had been protecting these secrets for 6 centuries. What nobody realized was that this different approach was right around the corner. The breakthrough that had eluded human intelligence for over 6 centuries finally came, but from an entirely different kind of mind. At the University of Alberta, Professor Greg Kondrak and his graduate student, Bradley Hauer, approached the Voynich manuscript with something that no previous researcher had ever possessed: complete emotional detachment. Their artificial intelligence system didn't care about academic glory, didn't have some theory to defend, and felt no frustration when initial attempts failed. Using machine learning algorithms, Kondrak and Hauer's AI system analyzed the text against over 380 different languages, both modern and historical, searching for structural similarities in syntax, vocabulary patterns, and grammatical construction that human researchers had either missed completely or dismissed as irrelevant. What was discovered from this computational approach was beyond stunning. The AI identified Hebrew as the most likely base language, with over 80% of decoded words matching entries in Hebrew dictionaries. It was discovered that the key insight that had completely gone over the heads of human researchers was the manuscript's use of something called alphagrams, a technique where letters within words are alphabetized, the vowels removed, or systematically rearranged according to specific rules. This simple but incredibly effective encryption method created just enough distortion to completely fool human pattern recognition, but we have only yet to scratch the surface. The moment that changed everything came when Kondrak and Hauer's AI system successfully decoded what appeared to be the manuscript's first complete sentence. After applying minor spelling corrections and running the results through Google Translate, the machine produced a translation that, while admittedly awkward, contained unmistakable grammatical structure. It read, "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people." The sentence wasn't perfect and the meaning remained really unclear, but for the first time in over 600 years, the Voynich Manuscript had produced something that actually resembled human communication, rather than complete gibberish. This one breakthrough proved beyond doubt that the manuscript contained genuine meaning that had been systematically obscured through sophisticated encryption techniques. This shows that the original author had employed anagramming and letter substitution methods that were particularly effective against human analysis. These techniques created exactly the kind of ambiguity that human brains naturally dismissed as meaningless noise, but which machine learning algorithms could systematically untangle through exhaustive pattern testing. However, some scholars considered this interpretation as mere gibberish and held no actual meaning, claiming that the researchers had to tweak the output and depend on Google Translate to get that one line. So was this a mere conjuring of words and letters by the AI to force a meaning? Or could we really be one step into deciphering a 600-year-old mystery? While this was going on, a parallel breakthrough was emerging through advanced imaging technology that nobody saw coming. In 2024, this medieval manuscript expert named Lisa Fagan Davis, head of the Medieval Academy of America, began re-examining multispectral scans of the Voynich manuscript that had actually been taken years earlier but never thoroughly analyzed. Sometimes the most important discoveries are sitting right under your nose. Multispectral imaging uses different wavelengths of light, ultraviolet, infrared, and various segments of the visible spectrum, to reveal details that are completely invisible to the naked eye. When Davis applied the same technology to 10 specific pages of the manuscript, the results were absolutely startling. Hidden beneath the visible text, Davis discovered faint marginal annotations written in regular Latin script, the kind of writing that medieval scholars would have been familiar with. These weren't just random doodles as they appeared to be. They were proof of attempts to decode the Voynichese characters and match them to Latin equivalents as they thought it to be an early translation key. Someone had been trying to crack this code centuries ago. The handwriting, ink composition, and historical context all strongly pointed to Johannes Marcus Marci, that 17th century Prague physician who had owned the manuscript before sending it to Athanasius Kircher in the last desperate attempt to get it decoded. This discovery fundamentally altered our understanding of the manuscript's history. Marci's hidden annotations suggested he had identified genuine patterns within the text and had been actively working to crack the code, using methods that were remarkably similar to what the AI eventually succeeded with. This now raises an interesting question. If Marci had found some Latin equivalents in the manuscript, could the document possibly be a hybrid of Hebrew and Latin? Slowly, the layers of mystery that had protected the manuscript's secrets for over 6 centuries were being stripped away. But as these layers came off, what they revealed underneath was far more disturbing than you can ever imagine. As researchers chiseled deeper into the Voynich manuscript's encryption, a disturbing pattern began to emerge from the fragments. Rather than revealing ancient wisdom or mystical knowledge, The text seemed to document practical medical procedures with a very specific focus on women's reproductive health. Why would a manuscript centuries of years old so desperately hide information about women in the first place? To shed a bit more light here, in 15th century Europe, medical knowledge related to women's bodies existed in an incredibly dangerous gray area between legitimate science and heresy. Now, the Catholic Church maintained strict, uncompromising control over what kinds of healing practices were considered acceptable, and any medical text that dealt with female reproduction, fertility control, or childbirth outside of official ecclesiastical approval could result in charges of witchcraft, heresy, or trafficking with demonic forces. The manuscript's botanical sections, when viewed through the lens of AI translation, began to reveal their true, terrifying purpose. Those impossible plants may have been carefully disguised illustrations of herbs and compounds used in medical procedures that the Church had specifically prohibited. The twisted root systems and dripping leaves were functional diagrams that could be an indication of exactly how to prepare and administer treatments that could prevent conception or manage reproductive health in ways that directly contradicted official religious doctrine. Those women floating in green pools appeared to be clinical illustrations of actual medical procedures being performed with herbal solutions. Every single bizarre image that had puzzled researchers for centuries was beginning to reveal itself as a component in a comprehensive medical manual that its author had encrypted, probably to avoid persecution, torture, or execution at the hands of religious authorities who viewed such knowledge as a direct challenge to divine will. Now, these are not 100% proven yet, but we are certainly closer to the truth than ever before, and the truth appears to be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. As AI progressed further and further into the manuscript, researchers began to confront an uncomfortable reality that was keeping them awake at night. The Voynich Manuscript could have been encrypted to protect valuable knowledge and keep it locked away from simple minds. The text appeared to document not just medical procedures, but methods for manipulating human consciousness and behavior in ways that could be easily weaponized by anyone with malicious intent and access to the right materials. If medieval practitioners had gone to such extreme lengths to hide this knowledge, what did that suggest about its potential for misuse in the wrong hands? More troubling was the growing possibility that the manuscript's secrets might have been deliberately suppressed by someone who understood the potentially destructive power of their own knowledge. But the unanswered question now is, who is this knowledge being protected from? Could it be the Church that gives no room for unconventional thinking, or from the minds of the general public to avoid misuse? The most terrifying aspect of our current situation is that AI has only begun to scratch the surface of the Voynich Manuscript's secrets. Current translation efforts have focused primarily on the first 10 pages of the manuscript, leaving over 200 pages of encrypted content still waiting to be decoded. If these initial revelations about forbidden medical practices and consciousness manipulation represent just the beginning, what darker knowledge is hiding in the manuscript's remaining sections? The pharmaceutical and recipe sections, which contain the densest concentration of text and the most complex diagrams in the entire manuscript, remain largely untranslated. Early AI analysis suggests these sections may contain the most sensitive and potentially dangerous information, just as the manuscript's decoded introduction hints at. As artificial intelligence models become more and more sophisticated, the complete revelation of the manuscript's contents appears absolutely inevitable. Regardless of whether we are prepared for what else it might reveal, we're essentially bracing up for a collision with knowledge that was deliberately hidden for what may turn out to be very good reasons. Now, you might be wondering, why should you care? Based on the discovery so far, the 15th century appears to have harbored incredibly sophisticated networks of medical practitioners who possessed advanced knowledge about human reproduction, pharmacology, and consciousness alteration that probably exceeded modern understanding in very specific areas. Should these mysteries be unraveled, we might gain access to antidotes to some of the world's deadliest diseases. This alone forces a complete reassessment of how medieval authorities actually controlled information, and why certain types of knowledge were so suppressed in airtight systems. Throughout that period, this manuscript's existence proves that some advanced medical and spiritual practices weren't really lost during the medieval period, as historians thought. They were deliberately driven underground, preserved through elaborate encryption by practitioners who understood both their tremendous value and their destructive power. Now, this speculative breakthrough also demonstrates that artificial intelligence might have crossed a crucial threshold in its ability to decode human secrets of any kind. Although there is still so much work to be done, the Voynich Manuscript serves as a stark warning about the completely indiscriminate power of artificial intelligence to unlock knowledge that was deliberately concealed for specific reasons. AI's purely mechanical approach to decoding bypasses these ethical considerations entirely, focusing purely on cracking the code without any regard whatsoever for why it was created in the first place, or what consequences might follow from its revelation. As artificial intelligence becomes increasingly capable of penetrating historical, governmental, and personal secrets, society must create a limit to how far these machines can go in the pursuit of knowledge. Maybe we are on the edge of witnessing the rise of an army of AI that could outperform the intellect of 1,000 Albert Einsteins put together. And you know the truth? This isn't far from becoming a reality. The Voynich Manuscript's secrets are nowhere near fully revealed. Don't be swayed by the hype. Over 200 pages of encrypted content remain untranslated, but maybe not for so long. As AI algorithms continue to evolve at breakneck speed, the complete decoding of the manuscript appears not just likely, but inevitable. As it stands, the question that should be keeping us all awake at night is whether we are truly prepared for what else we might find hidden in the shadows of history. What other encrypted texts are sitting in archives around the world, waiting to be interpreted? What other undiscovered wisdom lies sleeping in dusty libraries, university collections, and private vaults? The Voynich Manuscript may very well be just the beginning of revelations that will force humanity to confront extremely uncomfortable truths about what we know, what we've forgotten, and what we were never meant to remember.